Welcome to the Auto Riff Tailgate Chat with Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing
Good.
good. I definitely had our weeks off for a second, so I'm really glad that you texted to remind
Yeah.
me.
So on this one, we're going to be talking about the new Ford Lightning. Just got revealed last night. Uh, so I watched most of the reveal. I don't think you said you didn't get a chance to yet.
No, you were up at
I
5 a.m.
was.
I was off at a doctor's appointment. I needed a TB test for nursing school because I guess in 2021 I still need to prove that I don't have the
Yeah.
consumption. So that was half my day.
Yeah. Just prior to this, I thought it was an 1890 disease. I didn't realize it was still a thing.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I'm gonna fade in a picture of, and if okay, just before I do that, I don't know if anyone's noticed new graphics. Well, without further ado, the F-150 Lightning from 2022. There it is. So there's a side profile of it. Uh, so first impressions, just from the side, Matt. What do you think?
If it wasn't for the rims looking kind of distinct, because obviously it's in motion,
Yeah,
I wouldn't think anything special of it from here. If I was just scrolling through and it wasn't labeled,
yeah.
but it doesn't stick out negatively to me. It's like, oh, okay,
No,
the truck
that was
Ford is sticking with like a more sleek design.
so my initial impression of it, because so leading up to it, all they showed were like blackout pictures with just the lights, right? And I thought, oh, the lights look really cool. And maybe I just didn't really know enough about the F-150 because I'm not a huge Ford fan. Yeah,
Wow.
but I was really excited about the truck. But
Hashtag
yeah, I
breaking
know.
news.
But seeing that, I thought, oh, it looks. When I finally saw it this morning, I was like, oh, that looks just like an F-150. There's nothing different about it whatsoever.
Yeah, it kind of just from this angle, but could be wrong.
Yeah.
Uh, this though, I I like. It kind of gives me the new Explorer vibes from the front.
Okay.
Like kind of
Here,
the SUV vibe.
I'll transition it over. There we are. There's
Oh, I
so
guess now
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
else can see
Sorry.
it. Same thing.
There's the preview side, and then there's what everybody else can see side. We're still figuring this out, guys. We apologize.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the front. It does. You're right. It does kind of look like the new Explorer. And I do like that the light bar goes all the way around. I also like that it can tow my helicopter that I have out back, so that's good. Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
that's very
I was
important.
concerned.
You take the kids to
I
school and
I
everything.
want a truck that can tow my helicopter when I apparently can't fly it. I think you only tow the helicopter once, right? You tow it to wherever it needs to start from, and then
I,
then you're done. So that
I
was it
I
was a
have to
weird
wonder,
choice
like,
to me.
who the hell thought it was a good idea to tow a
I know
helicopter
that.
as part of
So,
a promotional deal?
and that's why I
You know?
took this picture during the launch was because I was like, who tows a helicopter? How often are you
I mean,
driving somewhere you see a
obviously, I have a
helicopter?
fleet of them, but I guess I live differently than the
Yeah.
peasants. I don't
Well,
know.
that's the thing too, is you would think, okay, well, you need to be super duper rich in order to afford it, and you don't. Because it starts at I have it priced here, it starts at $41,669, which is expensive, yes, but really not compared to other trucks. And that's
Whew.
the work
Man,
truck
times have changed.
edition, which I don't know what the base work truck comes with, but it goes up to the platinum level, which is 90 grand.
Oh God.
But
Oh my God.
no, it's
Ouch.
expensive. Don't get me wrong. Like for us little people here, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But really, in the grand scheme of pickup trucks these days, that's pretty normal.
Yeah, and trucks are can be crazy expensive. A lot of times you'll have people they get into a truck to get out of maybe a not so good deal on a car they had because they can bury a lot of equity in them.
Right.
And I'm I like the look of it. I think it's a tough pill to swallow that 40 to 90,000 in a window is normal.
Yes. No, it is. I agree.
So I'm curious to see what the depreciation on it will be.
Yeah.
in 1 to 3 years, to see how it holds up to that. Now, aesthetically speaking, it's quite pleasing to the eye, I think. But from this angle, it very much looks, you almost can't see the bed of the truck, so it almost looks um like an Explorer without a trunk space.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually what it reminds me of.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now that you brought that up, I do agree. Apparently, it comes with like three different grills. That's the more aerodynamic of them. Uh, so a couple other firsts is it has independent rear suspension, which is Explorer like. Uh, Pretty much no other trucks minus like the Honda Ridgeline and maybe the new Hyundai Santa Cruz, which I'll talk about on a future podcast. Whether or not I think those two are trucks. Those two have independent rear suspension, but everything else has a solid axle live rear suspension. And then also, I'm just gonna put this in here. It has a frunk. What do you think of the frunk?
No shit.
A front
That
trunk.
we made a joke about this actually the other day. I made a frunk joke about when we were talking about what kind of car
Yeah.
you would build, and we were like, no frunks.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to quote a very famous philosopher and designer, Edna Mode from The Incredibles. No frunks goes along like no capes.
I will say,
For the
I mean, it is a whole lot of extra storage space. And it's kind of like, so if you remember my Dakota when I was growing up, I had the toolbox in the back, which is pretty much where all of my schoolwork went.
Yes, actually, I remember you digging some anatomy assignments or something out of it one day, and I'm like, do you have this assignment? You're like, oh yeah, it's back here somewhere, and you just pulled it out. I'm like, why is it put it in your backpack? You're like, no. Clint and I go way back. We were literally in high school together, and we took classes together at some point. It's like that toolbox was everything, though. And part of the charm of your truck was the toolbox.
Yeah. Well, it was a regular cab, so there was
totally
nowhere to put
on
anything.
The frunk. I'm not sold on the frunk. I think on this because there is a back seat.
Yeah, but then if your kids are back there, it's a good place to put your like suitcases and stuff if you're going on a trip, and then you had and you don't have to expose them to the elements if you don't have a tonneau cover.
If you don't have if you don't have if you don't purchase the cover for the bed of the truck. Oh my God, it's like escaping
tonneau cover. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have the cab cover or the cover or any kind of protection back there, you don't have to purchase an extra accessory. Right. You do have the frunk. Now, I do see the utility of that. I can absolutely respect utility and practicality. Yeah. That is oftentimes why I've purchased a sedan or an SUV over maybe a truck that I wanted, or maybe like a two-door car, or like a more preferred vehicle. So I totally respect practicality, and especially like in your case, you have two kids. Putting something in the back seat may not be a good idea, especially if they can reach it.
Yeah. No, it's totally so. All the road trips we've taken with the kids, we put a bunch of stuff in the bed because I do have a tonneau cover, but a lot of stuff has to go in the back seat as well, particularly snacks, video games,
right?
Random things like that.
Anything that can be,
Yeah. So now we move on to the interior, which looks, other than a 15.5-inch screen, looks like a Ford F-150 interior. That is a giant screen.
I will say that that is a giant, that is like a movie projector.
That's like all the new Teslas, though. And even, really, if I think about it, the new Rams also have a huge screen in them.
Confession, even though I don't drive trucks like myself regularly or anything like that, I like being inside them. My stepdad has driven them most of my life, and I always liked being in them. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you and I became friends, you had a truck. So I always, even though I do like to drive, and when I'm not with you specifically, or somebody who has to drive either due to motion sickness or control freakism, I usually am the one that does the driving. But I love being in the passenger I love being a passenger in a truck, especially in like an extended or king cab, because it's just so comfortable to
Yeah.
me. I don't know why, but it's great.
Yeah. And you do like you
And this,
sit higher, you feel like for me I feel safer like pulling into traffic because I can see up over other cars to see what's behind them,
right.
and so like I
And sometimes it's not even the cars, it's like the medians or like through construction, you can see over and not accidentally, cut somebody off that maybe you didn't realize you were going to cut them off.
right. So here's the front of it when they were driving it out for the unveil. So yeah, no, I like the light bar. That's like there's like the whole it goes up the side, goes across the hood, and then comes back down. I do like the light bar. I don't. I They may be exactly what's on the other F-150s. I just don't pay that much attention to the other F-150s.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Ford Escape and I barely pay attention to it. My husband didn't even want this car, want the Escape,
Yeah,
because he doesn't like how it's basically a car front. He's like, I want an SUV. I want it to be more, you know, athletic and SUV like. If I wanted a car, I'd get a freaking car.
right.
But so I'm with you on that one. Other than that, it looks pretty standard. It looks like, okay, this
Yeah,
looks like
and I
the current era of trucks. This is what it looks
yeah,
like. Like it blends in.
I have seen comments where more so if we well, I don't have a picture of it, but if you remember the original Lightning, Ford Lightning, it was a sport version of the F-150. It was a lowered regular cab, short bed, sometimes step side, sometimes not, but it usually had a faster motor in it and everything, and it was a sport truck.
Is that like the days of what was it? So you remember the S10,
Yeah,
and it had like
it was there was
a
a
Z70,
no, yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's a
and it was lowered. It was like slammed on its balls down to the ground
yeah,
and lowered, and which in Florida was terrible because we had speed bumps everywhere and it, basically sea level.
yeah,
So anytime there was rain, I always imagine, and you can laugh at me for this. In the cartoons, the old cartoons, where there was like a puddle of water and everybody hiked up their skirts and like pranced across,
yeah,
the screen,
yeah, yeah.
not get their dresses or clothes wet. That was what it reminded me of when I would see the S10s or like the lowered
Yeah.
cars, lowered trucks enter like a puddle. Just them
Yeah.
hiking themselves up and like walking themselves.
The Dakota could have
That's
been
just what it reminds me
classified
of.
that way too at one point until I raised it up when I got it. But
Well, yeah.
when I bought it, it had like tiny little tires on it, and it was like stock height. It was not very high, and then I put the 2-inch lift on it and bigger tires. But
We could see your truck anywhere in our city.
yeah,
Anytime I passed you, because it was a small area, we regularly saw you throughout town. I'm like, oh, there goes Clint the other way. Of course, I didn't have a cell phone yet, so I couldn't text you and be like, get me out of here. But no, back to the actual lightning that you brought me on to talk about
yeah,
with you. No, it. So the current era of trucks look like this essentially. I feel like it blends in a good way. I mean, it doesn't stand out negatively to make me go, ugh.
right,
Um, but it doesn't stand out to me in a way that makes me go, wow. I will just looking at it and just kind of in general conversation to make me say, I'm going to pick this over one of its 3 or 4 or 5 competitors.
yeah, yeah.
Yet I haven't seen anything specifically. But what about you?
Well, so what gets me, if you're gonna say its competitors are other electric trucks, so the GMC Hummer was unveiled earlier or late last year, I think it was, and it comes with a base price of 80 grand,
Oh my god!
which is for a trim that's not going to be available until 2024 is what I read. And the edition that's going to come out first next year, the same time as the Lightning, is going to be $113,000.
Who the hell makes this money?
Right. Yes.
Oh my
That.
god!
The Hummer, I would
Okay,
say.
so if we're talking about practicality,
Yeah.
we're gonna go with probably the cheaper option because
Yeah.
then
Well, that's the thing. Is
ooh.
the Lightning here is like just an electric option or alternative to the gas engine. So So to kind of break down those two, the Hummer is a very special built truck. It's almost like, so it's like a competitor to like the Ford Raptor and the Ram TRX, where they're like off-road, high horsepower. Like you can zoom across the desert and not feel anything. The Hummer also has four-wheel steering where it can crab walk and do stuff like that. So it has more features than the Lightning. But if you were trying to just get into an electric pickup and you make our type of money, middle class money, you're gonna end up in a Lightning, because the Hummer. I'm sorry, even
because
at
that's
the
all you
low
got.
trim of 80 grand, I'm not gonna go buy an $80,000 truck.
The insurance on that would just be
Yeah, even
beast.
beyond just the payments of that would be insane.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a few thousand a month in
Yeah,
everything.
it was the Raptor was the quickest F-150 that had been tested at a time of a 0 to 60 time of 5.2 seconds, and this one is estimated to do it in 4.4 seconds. So hella fast. It
The Lightning.
The Lightning is 4.4 seconds to 60. Yes. Like I said, it has independent rear suspension.
Okay.
It has almost perfect 50-50 weight distribution, which makes it probably the best handling truck, period. It has.
What does that do for towing though?
I don't think it matters any for towing, really. It's rated to
I mean,
tow
but what
10,000 pounds still,
helicopter?
so, which is almost as much as the gas engine equivalent. And
Well, and most people really aren't using their trucks
no,
for their
like,
full
yeah, we
capability.
talked about that last time, where
Yeah,
it most people, SUVs, trucks, and everything. It's about, well, what if I need to that one time? You know what I mean? So
right.
it has all wheel drive all the time. In So there's two
Plus,
battery options. There's a standard battery, which puts out 426 horsepower, and then there's a larger extended battery that puts out 563 horsepower and 775 foot-pounds of torque, and has a driving range of 300 miles on the bigger battery and 230 miles on the smaller battery, which is not bad.
so this could be interesting because it might change how people drive and how they plan their
Right.
trips. Because one thing about gas, obviously, you stop for 5 minutes, get
Yes.
5 minutes, get gas, and you're off. But it might be one of those things. Don't forget to, honey, come in and drop your keys. Let's go to the store and plug in the car.
Right. And that's something I we don't have to talk about on this one, but I did want to kind of talk about where the different driving or different travel experience that comes from an electric car, because like you said, when if you stop for gas, you stop for gas for 5 minutes, you go inside, you grab a snack, and you go back on your way. Where and
Right.
with the electric one, if it even takes half an hour, like it's
30
a
minutes is a
destination
big
stop
difference from
basically at that
five
point,
minutes.
right? So
Right. You better be
yeah,
touring. And what does that mean for travel if you have to stop every 200 to 400, if you have to stop for 30 minutes every 200 to 300 miles, because you can't go exactly 230 miles and then look for gas or look for a stop.
yeah. But
You know,
that to me, like,
that could be,
really brings restaurants into into the idea of stopping, or of having charging stations, right? Because now every time you stop, maybe it's lunch, maybe it's breakfast, maybe it's dinner.
right. Well, Cracker Barrel used to be a gas station,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So, like, this might come back. The history might repeat itself
Right.
with a new way of doing things. And also, this also puts in a good argument for better transportation, like light rails and high speed rails, because, you know, it isn't always beneficial. Many times I've driven places I would much rather have flown or taken public transportation, but it was so expensive or such a pain to fly or travel. It's just faster to get in my car and drive the
Right.
God knows how many hours to the next
I just,
thing I
yeah,
wanted to go
like
to.
I totally understand the idea of. I think I just bumped my microphone. Sorry. Of air travel and trains and all that. I just I hate flying. So
I really don't like flying either. I imagine, I mean, you're kind of claustrophobic, so I can't
yes,
imagine
yeah,
flying is
I'm
great for
very
you.
claustrophobic, and yes, the flying does not help in the slightest.
Do you know something I still do that I did not realize where I got it? And it's from eating with you for so many years. Whenever I go somewhere, like with David, because he's also tall like you, I'll always ask if he wants to sit on the outside. And I'd forgotten, like, where do I get that from? Like, it's because
Yeah,
you,
I like
like,
to.
you always sat on the outside because you have to have an
Yeah, and
exit.
that, and I like my legs in the aisle so I can stretch out.
Yeah, right.
So the F-150 has several outlets in the frunk, and it also has several outlets in the trunk. So it's kind of a cool thing about that is, so obviously you could power tools and stuff like that with it, but you could also use the truck as a generator for your house up to a certain amount.
That is
Yeah.
huge. Do you know how much of a difference that we would have had people that could have kept their heat on instead of dying of carbon monoxide poisoning here in Texas?
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
that's a big deal. A lot of people don't. I don't know why it happens every year that people like try to heat up their cars in the garage. Even with the garage door open, you shouldn't do that. Back it out into the driveway. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's not worth dying for or killing everybody in your
Right.
house. Um, but yikes. So, question on the plugs. So, if say you're charging your tools, you're charging your phone while you're driving, for
Uh-huh.
example, does that take
Yes.
away? It takes away
Yeah.
from
But
your
you
overall range.
get a, so there's an app you get with it called Ford Pass, I believe it was called, and
I have Ford Pass.
oh, do you? Okay, so that's, yeah, okay, so that's a good thing. All right.
It's probably an extension on it.
Yeah, well, it warns you when the battery life is down to like 5% or something on the truck.
Oh,
Well, like if you were driving, you would obviously see it, but like, or saying if you're
yeah.
powering your house, say you're using it as a generator or something in your house or whatever, you would be able to see, hey, I'm getting near the end here, and I can't go to work tomorrow even though there's no power.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really as the world we transition this way, I think it's going to be a major shift. We're going to have vehicles like the Lightning become more mainstream, which I overall think is a good thing. And because as a commuter or a short, most people really do stick to town other than, their annual vacation or, some people are jet setters, but how often really?
Right.
But how perfect is this for a week or two? You're still able to do projects. You're still able to haul a ton of crap. I mean, you can easily pack the kids in here, go to Home Depot, load up everything,
Yeah.
and come back, and you have plenty of room to do
Yeah.
it.
It has
You know,
all the capabilities. It's not like, so I, a little bit of a spoiler alert for anyone who's actually watching the live, which is probably nobody. Uh, the the Prius that I detail in the next podcast had a range of like 13 miles on the battery. Right. So 13 miles is sure, yeah, you're getting to the grocery store, you're coming back, and that's great. But we're talking 240 miles with the low end battery. That's still, that's a good amount. I mean, like, and like I said, you're gonna see a huge shift in how people drive and kind of how you take trips. I know a lot of people aren't gonna like it, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. My gas engine, I
but
could.
nobody wanted to make changes 50 years ago and 100 years ago. Everything has changed. People thought the TV wouldn't be successful.
Right. Well,
You know,
that's the thing is there's always gonna be those people who are like, fearful of what's coming, right? And
right. And it's important, I think, to stay with technology and accept it. Not so much embrace it and accept it and let it go, but more so embrace it, review it, criticize it. You can praise and criticize. You can say that, what, aesthetically, I appreciate it and I appreciate the idea, but I don't know if I'm there
right.
yet. And that's okay. Like, it's just when people just automatically go, no thanks.
Yeah.
Like, well, that doesn't help because the world is changing, and that's not a bad thing.
Right.
I think my biggest complaint with electric vehicles or alternate quote unquote alternate fuel vehicles is they're usually freaking hideous. You know,
Yes.
they try to make them edgy and futuristic, and they end up looking like some mutant vehicle you would never want to spot in the parking lot and identify it as your own.
No, and I did read that on when they designed this Lightning, it was very much, hey, don't make it like you said, it weirdly futuristic, and just make it something people will buy. Here's another cool feature I thought was cool on it was onboard scales. So when you hook a trailer to it or whatever, it'll actually there's a computers in there that'll tell you how heavy of a thing you're pulling, which is good when it'll tell you it. So it tells you how heavy the thing is, and then how much that thing will use up more battery.
See, that is fantastic. That is a great feature.
Yes.
And I'm really curious. One thing I'm curious about that we obviously won't know for probably 1 to 3 years. We start getting data back on it. And of course, in the coming generations of it, it'll be modified and tweaked. And, what are maintenance costs going to look like for things like this? Like when they break or malfunction,
Yeah.
how much of it can you just do a software update at home and say, essentially reset it and restart it?
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be the equivalent of, ma'am, have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in?
Yes. It is going to have over-the-air software updates, which I think most vehicles do these days. I don't even know why they put that. And it has a 8-year, 100,000-mile battery warranty on it as well.
Okay,
So that's pretty great. Last picture I had was the independent rear suspension, which we already talked about.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Are you?
Of the independent rear suspension?
Yeah.
I think it's going to make it for a great ride. Yes.
That's, I think, why I am a fan, because I think things like independent rear suspension and more level vehicles and, the weight distribution being good. And, I think it takes a lot of worry out that these are selling points. I think they're good selling points.
Yeah, and
I mean,
I think the
obviously a
traditional
$40,000
truck crowd will not like that.
Yeah.
But the traditional truck crowds isn't going to like an electric truck to begin with. This isn't probably
Yep.
for those people. This is, I mean, I think it's going to be a great commercial truck. So we'll just go ahead and kind of go into final thoughts here. I think it's going to be a great commercial truck for companies to save on gas.
Oh yeah, and the fleet
Yeah.
vehicles that they rent out and send out for people because, oh, we're gonna do steal the car. Good
Yeah.
luck, you ain't getting far.
Right. I do wish they had done something a little more special with the looks, but I do also understand why they didn't. I think the price is amazing for what it is, and I think 4.4 seconds to 60 in a what if
That's
you didn't
pretty
if
great,
you were
actually.
driving by this thing and didn't know what you were looking at, you would think it was just an F-150.
Right, and I appreciate that. I think that when you make these kinds of changes, I think the better approach is to change it mechanically and change the technology and the mechanics of it before you change the aesthetics of it.
Yeah.
Because aesthetics of vehicles shift every 5 to 10 years. There's no reason to change that timeline because it does seem to work for people. Things come in and out of style and fashion, and leave that alone. Let that play out, and then change. Do this. I will overall say it's a positive that I'm a fan. I'm curious as to what our 16 and 17-year-old selves would have said, because when I was
we wouldn't have
younger,
liked it.
I liked the rougher ride.
No, we
What?
wouldn't have liked it.
No, it would have been like, throw me around,
Yeah.
I want to know I'm in a truck.
Right.
Now I'm like,
Oh, my back.
my L5.
Oh, my back. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. My first thought when I get in and out of a new vehicle, I'm trying something. It's like, oh, how does my L5 feel about this?
Yeah. Yeah. The Ram rides surprisingly well, actually. But so
So curious. So if you had to go on a go on a parking lot, go on a test drive, and pick out, and both your truck and this were the budget, would you be comfortable buying the Lightning?
Oh,
Aside from your biases on
aside from my
Ford,
bias,
yeah, just look. Imagine this is the Dodge
okay,
version.
um,
Would you be comfortable trying it out this
yes.
generation?
Actually, yes. I think electric cars have been around long enough that they all have a pretty good grip on the battery technology and all that is obviously going to keep getting better. Charging technology is going to keep getting better. I
Right.
always kind of assumed when my time with my Ram is done, that I would go with an electric something.
Yeah, we're about at that
Yeah,
time. Um, I think we're at the point where we're hoping to just hang on to one vehicle for as long as
yeah.
possible to not have to deal with the expense of two. But we're also kind of in the sense of like, okay, well, we know the world is changing. We're just kind of like, okay, well, which vehicle is it gonna be?
Okay, so if it was your money, you have the money, you're in the market, would you get one?
For this one, for an extended cab, I would say
Well,
yeah.
it only comes in that one
David is
configuration. It only comes in that 4 door with a
yeah,
5.5 foot bed.
yeah. I would be okay with that. I think assuming I enjoyed the test drive, um, as a primary vehicle, it could be a little challenging now, for timing because both of us we're both going to nursing school at the same time, so there's that fear of like, what if we need to charge the car, and we screw ourselves and are late for work or something. But on a normal life, like normal year in our lives, yeah, I think I would go for it. I mean, David's 6'3", and we do all of our own home projects. We do all of our own moving, all of our own everything. It's got the space, the height. I mean, and fits right into Texas. I mean, if we're talking about
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, I would say yeah.
Okay.
I Blue is my favorite color, so I think that blue is even probably that is the blue I would go with. The one
No,
that's on the
sorry. I just went back to
towing
silver.
the helicopter. Yeah. So, yeah, those would be my final thoughts on
Okay.
it. So I would say overall, it's a yes, and I definitely would give the thumbs up to. I really hope the technology keeps evolving
Yeah, no, for sure.
and becomes more accessible.
Okay, well, with that, that's our opinion. That's the reveal of the Lightning. That's our opinion and some facts and all that. I'm not gonna beg you to like and subscribe to the channel because I don't like when people do that. If you feel like doing it, do it. But then,
Though I do think you should because I really enjoy. I'm so glad you asked me to help you with this. And I have to say, a lot of my friends love your channel. So
I have
yeah,
so I'm up to 120 listens on the podcast, not including
see,
the yeah. I'm pretty proud of that actually. And
you should be.
hopefully
You work
yeah,
hard.
and it'll just keep going up hopefully from here. Uh, so with that, yeah, like and subscribe. I don't have any cool animated things to put on the screen. This was as technologically advanced as I could get. Was this? Um, I do appreciate everyone listening. Be sure to follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and email at theautoriff@gmail.com. And with that, Matt, you have a great night.
You too. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you.